What's going on, guys? It's about 12 a.m. right now. Can't really sleep, to be honest with you, even though I'm pretty tired, but I figured I'd unbox a few things for you and get to installing said things. So stay tuned for the video. I just want to apologize ahead of time if I look really unenthusiastic, but I really want to put out some content for you guys and show you exactly what I have. Right in front of us, we have the Yonaka B-Series Stage 3 clutch. A lot of the other guys in the challenge have been running the XTD clutch, and I chose to go with this. So I'm just gonna open this up real quick. So you can see over here, we just got done painting the transmission and the engine is ready to go. I have an OEM flywheel that we're gonna be using for this specific setup. I don't really wanna go with a lightweight one just because I'm not too crazy about it revving up high, especially with the nitrous. And since it's a stroker motor, I can't rev up too high anyways. So I just decided to stick with the stock flywheel. Right off the bat, we have a little Yonaka card. So their website is www.yonaka.com. The lanyard, I had a Yonaka lanyard like 4 or 5 years ago, back when I had my purple Integra. I forgot what I bought off their website, and it came with one. It's super awesome to see it. I lost mine a couple years ago, but I used to always keep my keys on it. I think I'm gonna start using it again since it's been such a long time. It's really cool to see that again. All right, here we have our 6-puck Stage 3 clutch. Just gonna set this down right there. Then next in the package, we have our throwout bearing that comes included with their kit. And sorry if I'm talking a little bit low right now. I have my garage open. I don't want my neighbors waking up or complaining or anything. So I'm not really gonna be doing too much noise tonight. But this is the throwout bearing that comes with the kit. Nice and smooth. We're gonna be utilizing it with the all-wheel drive transmission in this specific setup. And over here, we have the obvious pressure plate. I was talking with John from Yonaka, and I was actually telling him about the build and whatnot, and he says that this specific clutch kit that they have is perfect for the type of torque that we're trying to make. It seems like a regular pressure plate, nothing crazy, a single disc, so we're gonna be using this on the all-wheel drive transmission. And for the all-wheel drive transmission, it actually takes the same type of clutch kit as any other B-Series. Well, for the Hydro transmission B-Series, because the early model DAs, I believe, came with a special spline for the clutch. But for most B-Series transmissions, it uses the same type of clutch components. So I could have gotten any off-the-shelf B-Series and it would work with the all-wheel drive transmission. So one thing that I want to point out right here is our hardware for the flywheel and our hardware for the pressure plates. So a lot of people have mixed feelings about this. I always do red Loctite, not a crazy amount, but just a little bit onto the flywheel bolts, which is this right here. And I still use the OEM torque specs for this, unless I'm using ARP hardware and I use their specific specifications. And then for the pressure plate bolts, I use the blue Loctite, and I also use the OEM requirements for this. This isn't any fancy hardware, that's just OEM bolts. If I wanted to do ARPs, you can order them online or off of eBay, or most speed shops carry them now. I actually have ARP hardware in the Integra that's right over there under wraps. So we're gonna get started on this. I'm actually just gonna take the engine off of the engine stand and just start bolting everything on. Just got the intake manifold and the exhaust header off. I have the hoist in between the engine stand, or I have the engine stand in between the hoist. Valve cover off so it doesn't scratch it up or anything. Obviously our valve train, like the rockers and the cams, still aren't on because we are waiting for the Delta cams, but just got a little rope around this so I can start jacking it up and safely take out the pin and be able to slide that out. That way I can just set the motor on the floor, put the flywheel and clutch assembly on and everything. Alrighty, so now that we have the motor already on the floor, I have some 2x4s just on the bottom to keep it upright. We're gonna be using our red Loctite in this part, as well as all of our bolts. What I like to do is just line up our bolts to start off with over a little piece of paper. That way we can place the Loctite over the threads of the bolts and not have it go everywhere. And then we also have our torque wrench that we're gonna be calibrating it correctly. We're going to be torquing it to the proper spec. To start off by putting a little bit of Loctite onto the threads. I just put a little dab right there, and then I kind of pushing around all the threads. So you can see there is some red on the actual bottom of the bolt, but nothing crazy. All right. Obviously, there's only one way that the flywheel can go on, with the mating surface on the outside, this on the inside. And each clutch kit has a little different look to it, but for the most part, it's all look the same. So basically, we just set that up right there. Some have an alignment dowel on the back, others do not. This one in this case does not have an alignment dowel on the back. And what I like to do is, once I have it started, get the little impact driver, get them to get flush. Obviously I don't tighten them, but I just want to have engagement. And then in a crisscross pattern, get the rest. Now, some people will swear by just doing this with a simple impact gun and air impact and then just call it a day. Obviously, we want to do it by the book. So we have our torque wrench right here. We're just going to set it to the correct torque spec right now. Now, the OEM torque spec for the flywheel bolts is about 76 foot-pounds. I normally round up to 80, and between that and the Loctite, we never have an issue. That's totally up to your preference if you want to go by the book and do 76. I do 80 just because it's a little bit more. We have a little bit more power and torque being delivered. Another thing to keep in mind, it's a lot easier to do this if you have a second pair of hands, somebody that can hold your crank bolt actually in place. So just putting a socket over the crank bolt right there and holding this down while you tighten it. Since I'm doing this by myself right now, one thing that I normally do if I'm doing it with a hoist, I'll set the socket in and then I'll set the breaker bar right under the hoist leg, or even I can bring the hoist around and set it within one of the legs right there, and it just makes it a lot easier. We're gonna be doing this to 80 like I said, and you're supposed to break it down in torque specs, or in torque steps. We're going to be doing about 30, then 60, and then a final of 80, just so we have it evenly distributed, doing a crisscross pattern. And once you're done using your torque wrench, we always want to zero it out as to not waste the springs inside. If you keep it at one setting, it can get worn out. A little spring inside that controls the torque measurement. So it's always good to zero it out. So I actually ended up flipping the breaker bar onto the other side because I realized I was tightening instead of breaking loose. So the motor was flexing this way. So just a little thing to keep in mind. Next thing would be to actually bolt the flywheel to the pressure plate, or the pressure plate to the actual flywheel itself, and do the clutch in between that. For that, we're gonna need a clutch alignment tool. I actually have one. And it is just as simple as this little thing right here. Some come billet aluminum, most of them come just a regular plastic piece. And essentially what this is, this piece right here goes into the pilot bearing, onto your flywheel, and this splined area is actually a corresponding spline to your clutch, the disc itself. So when you put this on, it centers your clutch disc, and you can evenly apply pressure to the pressure plate onto the flywheel. That way you know you're gonna have a perfectly centered clutch to avoid problems later on. Before we do that, I'm just gonna use a little brake cleaner and brake clean the surface on here as to not have any oil to contaminate the disc itself. I'm gonna do the same thing to the other side of the pressure plate, which is this portion right here. I'm going to use some brake cleaner and just clean that all off so we don't have any oil there either. Just got a little micro fiber cloth right here, a little bit of brake cleaner, non-residue brake cleaner. I'm using the 3M brake cleaner right now. I really like it actually. It's the first time I bought it and used it. It's really good. And you can see a little bit of dirt that comes off on it even though we've already cleaned it before. Do the exact same thing. Clean it off. You can see there's a little bit coming off there, You want to clean it off until you really have no debris or any dirt coming off. That way you know you have a clean seal. Now a lot of times when you get a new clutch, the packaging itself has some contaminants, some oils. So we're just going to want to wipe that off. You can see there's a bunch right there. And that's just so the parts won't corrode during shipping and whatnot. Doesn't mean that it's made wrong or anything, that's just how parts come. All right, now we know that this is nice and clean. We are going to get the clutch disc. Flat side goes against the flywheel. It's gonna go right there. Perfect fit right there. Now there are a few alignment dowels and you wanna make sure that you get them all in the correct spot. It's kind of hard to describe over video, but once you do it in person, you'll be able to see. You want all your dowels aligned with the proper holes right here, and you're gonna have the corresponding bolt holes all around and clearly visible. So I think I had it like this. So that is as it should be on the actual flywheel. We're gonna get a throw-up bearing. We're just gonna set it off to the side since we're not gonna be using it at this moment. But I have all of my bolts here. We can start actually putting a thread locker on them. And for the torque spec on this specifically, the pressure plate bolts say about 19 from the factory. You can do this in steps, just like we did the flywheel, although most torque wrenches don't go that low or much lower than a 20. So what I like to do is just go over it with either an impact driver very smoothly, very softly, or a ratchet just all around doing the crisscross pattern that we do. And then do the final torque of 20, just using the torque wrench once. That's totally up to your discretion. Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, red Loctite on the flywheel bolts, blue Loctite onto the pressure plate bolts. And I've never had one come loose, and they've always broken free very smoothly when I've been taking everything apart. And this is a 12.10 millimeter socket head. In this case, we have a 12 point for our 3/8, which we have a ratchet 3/8 or impact driver 3/8. But we also have a 12-point half-inch socket that we'll be using for the torque wrench. Finish bottoming them out onto from the pressure plate to the flywheel, just because sometimes a little paint in between the dowels can get stuck and it won't let it to go all the way down in the first try. And you want to keep this also as crisscross as possible, always making sure that the alignment key is intact and where it should be. And I'm going to bring this back over here, that way this won't spin. Once I have it all torqued down, I just like to go in a circular pattern around, not tightening more, but just to click it, just to ensure that I didn't miss one in the crisscross, because sometimes it's easy to get confused. 9 times out of 10, you don't get the wrong pattern or anything, but it's always good to double check. And as you can see right there, we are all set. The pressure plate is torqued onto the flywheel, clutch is in place using the alignment tool, and just pull it out. And you have your clutch kit installed. It's very simple. There's a little spring on the inside, and you basically just put this in right there, and the spring pops into place on a little ball that's right there. If you want to take it out, you kind of just maneuver it out, pull it out, and over this section right here is where you want to put your grease. And like I said, not a whole lot. Just want to have a little bit so your throw-out bearing can ride on there and stay nice and healthy. And I also like to put a little bit on this section right there where this portion will be going into your pilot bearing, and around the splines where it'll be going in and out of the clutch disc itself. Just like that. Keep it nice and greased up. And this, like I said, goes right into place. This portion right here goes over the fork right there. Sometimes you have to have it off to put this on. Nice tight fit right there. Just slides right in there. And there you have, this is how your engagement will be. Up and down, the spring is in place, holding it nice and tight. Shaft spins freely. Good amount of grease right there. Now we can actually mate it to the engine. You want to make sure you have your bell housing bolts nice and handy. That way, as soon as you get the dowels to engage where they need to engage, you can slip your bell housing bolts in and actually tighten it down while everything is nice and easy to move. All right, so we actually just got the transmission onto the engine itself. I cut away on the clip earlier. I was kind of fighting with the transmission just because of my foot placement, and I'm unfortunately in sandals like I always am, even though we shouldn't be when we're working on cars. But let's not pay attention to that. The transmission went on smoothly after I got good footing and everything. And the transmission is mated to the engine how it should with the proper clutch, and everything looks as it should. All right, and that pretty much sums up the video for tonight. I'm actually gonna end it right now. It is getting kind of late. I wanted to record a few more clips for tomorrow's video, which we're gonna be doing the actual install of the engine into the EF, or the CRX. And as you can see, I'm really tired. I couldn't sleep, so I decided to make the video, but I was too tired to actually show the enthusiasm that I like in my video. So I apologize about that, guys, but I really appreciate you bearing with us. Next in the channel, like I said, we're going to be putting the motor into the actual car itself with the transmission. I don't think it's going to be the final assembly or the final drop-in for the chassis. Since I really wanted to look at the fitment for everything, I know the alternator is going to probably need some modding on the placement and everything, and the wiring harness, I want to get it to where I can safely put the engine and transmission and not have to worry about that, and then modify all the wiring around it. And I just want to do little things like check the clearance on the exhaust manifold and look at how I'm going to route my radiator and everything. So without further ado, I just want to wrap up the video by saying thank you so much to Yonaka for providing us with the clutch kit for this specific build. If you guys haven't checked out their website, go check it out down below at yonaka.com. They've got a ton of great products. Like I said, I've been rocking them for years, ever since I had my purple Integra. If you guys are way back in the channel from like 3 or 4 years ago, you guys saw that car. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section below. We're going to be hoping for the best in the next couple days. I really want to have everything in the car. On Monday, we're going down to Clearwater to pick up some trailing arms for the car, and you guys are going to see all that great content. And sometime next week, our rear diff bracket should come in. So the build is all coming in together. A lot of stuff is going on, and you guys are definitely going to have to stay tuned for all this great content that's going to be coming forward. Like I said earlier, I apologize for my lack of enthusiasm. I'm just kind of tired, but I wanted to put out the video for you guys since I haven't been doing as much content as I normally like to. But I appreciate you guys bearing with me. Thanks for watching, guys. Enjoy the rest of your night, and have a good one.